welcome to my podcast, Love and Courageous. I'm the host, Demetris, and for today, I'll be speaking about the government shutdown. So, the government has been on shutdown since October the 1st because Congress fails to pass a new spending bill. The reason for the shutdown is because Democrats want a bill that will extend subsidies that reduce health insurance premiums for people in America. Now, the subsidies are set to expire at the end of this year. And since the shutdown, a lot of federal workers have been going without a paycheck, and people that rely on SNAP or WIC to help put food on the table are not receiving their benefits due to the shutdown. Some families even have to go to food banks. Now, starting with the military that is missing a paycheck due to the government shutdown, Donald Trump has a wealthy friend who donated $130 million to pay troop salaries, but it's only enough to cover them for 7 hours of work. Now, members of the military were expecting their next paycheck on October the 31st, and the government has yet to announce how it will fund their salaries. Now, the Pentagon has also scraped together around $5.3 billion to pay troops from other Defense Department funds. Vice President J.D. Vance made a comment on October the 28th and said, I quote, "We believe some troops, but not all, will be paid. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to pay everybody because we've been handed a very bad hand by the Democrats." Over 700,000 government workers are furloughed and barred from working. Employees essential for national security, including Defense Department employees who are not in the military, are required to continue working without pay. Now, according to Todd Harrison, a Pentagon budget expert and senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, said during the last completed pay period, around $6.5 billion covered the cost of paying active duty troops. And service members' last paycheck came through on October the 15th after Trump ordered Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to move $8 billion of military funding to pay troops. The Pentagon pulled the money from its research and development funds, and around $1.5 billion of the money is left over. Now, the Pentagon has requested $194.7 billion to pay troops for the entire year of 2026, which breaks down to about $8 billion per bi-monthly paycheck. Now, the Defense Department spokesperson, Sean Parnell, said the donation that was received from Donald Trump's friend was accepted under the department's General Gift Acceptance Authority. But however, experts say that's not how it works. Donations to the government are accepted into the Treasury Department, which holds the government's cash and then dispersed based on congressional appropriations, rules set by Congress about how the money is distributed. Any money that is donated into the federal government goes into the Treasury. However, that doesn't mean that an agency has the authority to take it. If there's not an appropriation, you cannot pull that money out of the Treasury. When it comes to food aid benefits, it's not clear when millions of families will receive their payments. Now, payments have stopped on November the 1st, and federal judges in Massachusetts and Rhode Island ruled on October the 31st that the U.S. Department of Agriculture needs to use $5.25 billion in contingency funds to make at least partial payments. So the Massachusetts federal judge, whose name is Indiri Tawani, ordered the administration to tell her by November the 3rd whether it will authorize at least reduced benefits for November. And if it does, its timeline for determining whether it will also authorize full benefits using the combination of the contingency funds and other money. Now, the judge in Rhode Island, whose name is John McConnell, ordered the administration to distribute the contingency funds and update him by noon on November the 3rd on the status of that distribution. Now, the Trump administration has followed up on the order with a motion stating that the judge needed to include reasons that better explain what's required. The judge responded with a written order on November the 1st saying the government needs to use the contingency funds to at least partially fund the November benefits and has the option of using other available funds. The judge also told the Trump administration to make full payments by November the 3rd, and it plans to use discretionary funds to make that possible. He also said if the Trump administration chooses to only make partial payments with the contingency funds, it needs to do that by November the 5th. Now, John McConnell has provided an extended deadline for partial payments because the government has said implementing partial payments for the country would require reworking existing systems. So, SNAP is one of the largest food assistance programs in America. About 70% of people are on SNAP. Now, there are other food assistance programs ran by the government. Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, also known as WIC, provides services for at-risk children under the age of 5, as well as for pregnant, postpartum, and breastfeeding women. WIC serves about 6.7 million people each month, including an estimate of 41% of infants in America. The National School Lunch Program, also known as SLLP, provides low-cost or free lunches to children. NSLP provides more than 4.8 billion lunches. The impact of the government shutdown programs like these and others backed by the government vary depending on the program. So that is all for the discussion for today. But however, I do want to mention that a lot of people are confused on how some federal workers are at food banks. Well, you got to realize some of them are actually being underpaid. More than half of federal workers make less than $100,000 a year. I think a lot of people think, oh, because they're federal workers, they make good money. Not all of them. So only 2% of federal workers make less than $40,000 a year, which that ain't nothing. You're not making money. Now, 23.5% makes between $40,000 and $69,000 a year. 25.1% of federal workers make between $70,000 and $99,000 a year. 22.6% of federal workers make between $100,000 and $129,000. 13.9% makes between $130,000 and $159,000. 6.9% makes between $160,000 and $189,000. And 6% makes $190,000 or more. With the cost of living, making $60,000 a year, even $70,000, that's probably not even enough for these people, depending on if they have kids as well. If they have kids, also if they have a mortgage, okay, if they live in the house, owning the house is expensive now. So that's all for today, and I'm going to get to the Black History Fact. The Black History Fact will be about Onesumius, an enslaved black man who introduced the concept of inoculation, an early form of immunization. During a smallpox epidemic in Boston of 1721, a born slave black man named Onesumius introduced vaccination in the area. Onesumius was sold to Puritan Boston minister Cotton Mather. Cotton Mather notices that Onesumius and other slaves all bear a similar scar on their arms. When he asks Onesumius about the scar, Onesumius tells Cotton Mather that in Africa, they would take pus from the wounds of an individual infected with smallpox and insert it into a cut made on a healthy person. This would cause a mild reaction and resulted in some degree of smallpox immunity for the healthy individual. Now, Cotton Mather was conflicted on how trustworthy Onesumius truly was, but however, he shared this information with a local white physician named Zabdiel Boylston. Zabdiel Boylston tried the technique on several people, including his own son, and he was pleased to discover the procedure was a success. He ends up using this practice called variolation, and saving hundreds upon hundreds of lives in the area. Cotton Mather and Zabdiel Boylston were held as heroes, while Onesimus was erased from this incredibly important milestone in medicine. And despite his life-saving contribution to the smallpox outbreak, he still was not a free man. Onesimus and countless other individuals were unjustly stripped of their rightful recognition as vital contributors to science and medicine. That is all for today. Thank you everyone for listening to my podcast, and I hope you all have a lovely day.